I see my name in shining lights. Yeah, a different city every night. Oh, I swear the world better prepare for when I'm a billionaire.
It's time to get down to business on the weekend's #1 business program. Known as the King of Networking, your host, Shalom Klein, has worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and created countless jobs. So, to success. Let's get down to business.
And indeed, we're all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. In business, we talk a lot about business here on with Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts from Get Down to Business on my website at shalomklein.com. And while you are there, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. It's going to be a jam-packed week of content and information you'll not want to miss. Let's jump right in. Thrilled to be joined by our neighbor to the north, and that is Dr. Alan Patterson, who is an organizational development consultant specializing in executive and leadership development. I know Alan has worked with hundreds of clients for over 4 decades, including the Federal Reserve Bank, Hewlett-Packard, Major League Baseball, and the United States Navy. And he has a new book. It's called Burn Ladders, Build Bridges, Pursuing Work with Meaning and Purpose. Dr. Alan Patterson, welcome to Get Down to Business.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you. So I love to get to know the person behind the microphone. Alan, I know I mentioned your brief bio over there, but tell me a little bit about how you became so passionate about this concept. And actually, if you can start by defining, what is a ladder burner? It
sounds devious, and I think that's probably why it's caught on. Several years ago, as someone was helping me with my online marketing. I've been a consultant in the area of leadership development for over 40 years. And the question was, well, who is the enemy? The villain that you're trying to help your client slay. And I said, well, that's pretty easy. That's the corporate ladder. I've seen so many really bright, motivated people just be completely flummoxed about what that is and how that's done and the disappointments and that they faced without really understanding how the ladder works and why it doesn't work. So I said, well, I think it's a matter of burning the ladder, getting that out of your mind, convincing yourself that you are good enough, and use a different type of motivation, inspiration to succeed in your work.
Absolutely. So important indeed. And, I know that in your book, you talk frequently about this. We spend about a third of our lives on the job. That's pretty staggering. And many people find their jobs pretty boring and stressful. Because the other third of their lives, if you actually look at it, is sleeping. And that's assuming, as you say in the book, that job stress isn't the one that's keeping you up at night. What's that third piece, and why do you argue that that's the most important?
Well, it's a time that you spend relating with other people. And I'm saying this is what it's all about, both from a personal and professional perspective. And that time needs to be cultivated, needs to be appreciated. And I think that when you are at work and you're talking about how relationships get built, it's really no different than what you would do on a personal basis, or at least I claim that's the way it should be.
Interesting, very, very interesting indeed. And that's there's some good lessons over there. And certainly before we cut out, I know we're gonna talk about some homework assignments, some lessons that people can take for themselves. But what do you see as the problems with climbing that corporate ladder that so many of our listeners are used to?
Well, I think the obvious ones, unfortunately, are that making it to the top is nearly impossible, especially if you're not an older white male with gray hair. And then one study that Malcolm Gladwell cited, you had to be over 6'2". So I can't make that cut. The problem is that it's everything that current social issues are trying to address about inclusion and equity and fairness. Women and people of color look up at the ladder and they don't see many people like themselves. So those are the major roadblocks that are in there. But there's another one too. I wouldn't say it's necessarily bigger, but it's prevalent. And that is at some point that as you climb up the ladder, you will hit a point where you will not be good enough. And I say that because of the way it narrows. And I also say it much like Lawrence Peters said it in 1968 when he coined the Peter Principle. And that people rise to their level of incompetence. And it's like, well, what does that mean? That's because so many people are chosen for their technical competence, when in fact, once you start climbing the ladder, there's a certain point that the ability to manage relationships and the emotional intelligence become more important than technical competence. Also getting into issues of politics, which are in every organization, and most people are not equipped.
Okay, absolutely. Completely agreed for sure. So ladder burning, I'm still blown away with that topic. Again, I'm chatting with the author of a new book, Burn Ladders, Build Bridges, Pursuing Work with Meaning and Purpose. We've been talking a lot about the Great Resignation. Where does ladder burning sort of fall into this trend that we've been seeing?
Yeah, it's funny that I started this book in 2019 with nothing on the horizon about the pandemic. And I think it really is serendipitous. I think there's always been a concern for many people that how they move forward in their careers is limited by just how many positions are available as they move up. The Great Resignation, I think, speaks to, I think people are just worn out. And I think that the pandemic and the time associated with that was on, if there was a good side, is that people are taking a breather and re-examining what really matters. And that's the whole concept behind ladder burning. We're about pursuing meaning and purpose. And it's not going to happen because you have a bigger house or make more money or think that that's the road to happiness.
Absolutely. Again, I'm chatting with Dr. Alan Patterson, organizational development consultant, who continues to ignore standard coaching methods, opting to pursue and lead clients towards the path of meaningful careers that are not only successful but also rewarding. I know Dr. Patterson has been doing this for over 4 decades and has this fantastic read, Burn Ladders, Build Bridges, Pursuing Work with Meaning and Purpose. And we're going to send our listeners over to Alan's website in just a little bit. So, we've been chatting a little bit just before this about the Great Resignation, about ladder burning, and you've seen a lot of organizations, some pretty big names. What do you see as the key things that have been working around organizational success and culture building that you think are sort of the exact opposite trend of the Great Resignation, when you see organizations that are actually attracting people and keeping top performing talent?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because out of all the culture initiatives that I've worked on through the year, I do have some examples of those that have worked. And it's very clear in my mind, what that takes. It takes someone, a leader, not necessarily the top person in the CEO of the organization, but a leader of an organization that firmly believes that developing talent is their job, as it is the responsibility of the executive or leadership team. And so they take this to heart. They build processes around it. They build standards around it. They teach I say the goal is to take managers and make them leaders, and to take leaders and make them teachers and coaches. And so the organizations succeed not because they've got values plastered on the wall somewhere or good coffee or all kinds of amenities. It's because they teach their leadership how to coach their group and understand what's critical and important to each person. They don't have to be psychologists. You're in the military, you see who the good leaders are and how they progress, and it's an understanding of how good, and they're not even just intuitive, they really understand why those relationship building skills are so important.
Fantastic. I've learned so much in this conversation, and I know I could take away a lot of action items from everything that we've talked about so far. But perhaps the most important one is that people should pick up a copy of the book, Burn Ladders, Build Bridges, Pursuing Work with Meaning and Purpose, because that's what we all want. I've been chatting with Dr. Alan Patterson. And Alan, I want to make sure everybody can get in touch with you to schedule perhaps a consultation, but certainly get a copy of the book. Where can we contact you?
Well, you can go to dralanpatterson.com. That's Dr. Alan, A-L-A-N, Patterson, 2 T's. And also the website where you could link to Amazon is ladderburners.com.
Fantastic. Dr. Alan Patterson, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners. I look forward to bringing you back on real soon here on Get Down to Business. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got to squeeze in a quick break here on the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Check out my website, shalomklein.com. We'll be right back, so don't touch that dial.